Bits.
Alright, it's time to get into the Christmas spirit, right? I mean, look at my sweatshirt. Rolling on in our Tales from the Bits series, it's time to focus on episode number 2 of season 1. And this episode actually aired on the same exact night as the first episode of June 10th of 1989. And All Through the House was directed by Robert Zemeckis. There's actually only 4 actors and actresses in this episode, and only 2 of them are really super prevalent, most notably starring Mary Ellen Trainor, known for various roles in movies such as The Goonies, Die Hard, a few of the Lethal Weapons, and actually most recently I saw her in Scrooged, starring Bill Murray. I watched that for the first time the other day. Also, kind of a side note, there's actually a lot of other people from Tales from the Crypt in Scrooged. I think I counted like 3 or 4 others, so that was pretty cool. I like playing that game a lot with movies from the 80s and 90s. The main antagonist of this episode is played by the iconic Larry Drake. Drake is known for such films as Darkman, Dr. Giggles, he appeared in The Karate Kid, and he's actually in another Tales from the Crypt episode in a later season that's pretty good, which obviously I hope to cover sometime in the near future. Quick little tidbit before we get started with the recap. I couldn't really find much, whether it be from my observation or my research as far as like Easter eggs. There was definitely some better stuff for the first episode. But one thing to note, when we have a scene that comes up later on where a radio announcer is talking, they're referring to the county as the Gaines County area. Basically that was a reference to William Gaines, who was the publisher of the comics back in the 1950s for EC Comics. So in All Through the House was originally in a Vault of Horror comic, which is actually one of the first issues that I got when I was reading through all these as a kid. That's pretty cool. And this is also not even the first time that this has been adapted to the big screen, so to speak, even though obviously this is TV. And All Through the House was actually in the original Tales from the Crypt movie, which was actually pretty good as well. I prefer the HBO one, of course, but the original is pretty good. And before we get started with the recap, I wanted to say that this is probably the episode that really got me into this show. I love it. It got me so into it that, like I mentioned, I started collecting and reading all the comics and stuff. And this is definitely in my top 10 Tales from the Crypt episodes. I don't know exactly where it would be right now, but spoiler alert, I really enjoy this one, and I think you will too. But let's get on with the recap. The episode starts with a beautiful Christmas scene. Everything is warm and cozy. You got music playing, chestnuts roasting on an open fire, there's obviously a fire, and all is well. It was the night before Christmas, right? Then Mary Ellen Trainor's character, who is actually just dubbed as wife, I realized while I was writing this that, yeah, she actually doesn't really have a name in the episode. It's never said anywhere, so that was interesting. Anyway, she kills her husband, who I believe is named Joseph, but again, if you look on IMDb, it's just named Father, with a fireplace poker. Brush off the killing, it seems like she's probably in the clear, but she almost makes a fatal mistake. The wife's daughter actually wakes up from bed and comes down. She's probably all hyped up for Christmas and stuff, right? Wants to see Santa Claus. The mom tells her to go back to bed, but funny enough, she actually says goodnight to her stepfather. Again, I believe his name is Joseph, but little does she know that Joseph's already dead. After doing the deed and after the daughter goes back to bed, the wife then calls her Giga Chad boyfriend, who's dubbed the Vic Monster, gotta love it, to let him know of what had just transpired. In an attempt to clean up the murder scene, I guess in a festive way, she then puts a plastic bag over Joseph's head with a bow and proceeds to bring him outside to try to dump him down the well. In a pretty cool Tales from the Crypt style fashion, while she's outside, you're still able to see and hear inside, and you hear on the radio that there is a escaped mental patient in, I believe it's called Pleasantville, the Pleasantville area, who actually stole a Santa Claus outfit from a victim's home, has already killed a woman in the area, so on and so forth. But of course, only we hear that. The main character, the wife, the mom, whatever you want to call her, she's outside and doesn't know a thing of that. When getting ready to dispose of Joseph's body down the well, we're actually treated to a pretty cool jump scare. Joseph, who you probably thought was dead, right? Because he had a fireplace poker literally stuck in his brain, comes back to life with one last gasp effort to choke his wife to death. Unfortunately for Joseph, his revenge plot is, goes by the wayside, I guess, and he croaks for good. But now this is where things get interesting. Off in the distance you hear some faint jingles and shuffles. Confusion is clearly setting in for the main character. And then we notice that the axe that was outside is no longer there. From this point on, Crazy Santa has entered the fray. Santa then attacks our lead character. There's a bit of a struggle, ultimately which leads to a stabbing in the face with an icicle. Yes, the main character grabs an icicle and very gruesomely stabs Larry Drake's Santa character in the face. It's quite gnarly. Obviously, this Santa's a maniac, so that doesn't stop him from, coming forward. Ultimately, his attempt is officially thwarted by getting hit in the hand with the axe, with the sharp edge, of course. The reason I'm saying it's the sharp edge of the axe, well, we'll get to that later. Obviously, after getting hit in the hand with the axe, his attempt to get to the front door officially ends. Obviously, at this point, very distraught, the main character picks up the phone to call 911. But there's a problem. You can't just call 911 right now, because you killed your husband. Sort of, right? Maybe if she heard the radio broadcast, she can kind of spin something, which I guess we might talk about a little bit later. At this point, the main character is still scrambling, thinking, what do I do, what do I do? And while, kind of contemplating her next steps, a tire swing crashes through the window in Santa's back. Another tussle occurs with Santa, and this time he is once again thwarted by the axe, as I kind of alluded to earlier, but now he's hit with the blunt side of the axe. Yes, so Santa is knocked out, he's in the nether realm, something that Joe Rogan would be proud of at this point. Shortly after the scene, the main character receives a phone call, and it's actually the police. The police are kind of touching base with everybody in the area regarding the earlier radio broadcast, basically saying, hey, there's a maniac on the loose, be careful, stay inside, blah, blah, blah. After hanging up the phone, this actually then gives the main character the idea of, wait a minute, I know how I could work all this out. I just knocked out Santa, my husband's dead, but I didn't kill him, Santa did it. So, yeah, you kind of get the point. So now the wife's main goal is to stage the murder of her husband to make it look like Santa Claus did it and not her. She heads back outside to embed an axe in his face, and we're kind of treated with a pretty cool scene that's good for tension building, missing the axe swing a few times before ultimately kerplunking right in the bullseye, so to speak. Before our main character went outside, she put a doorstop up on the front door, and obviously it's a snowy night, wind is blowing, so on and so forth. The doorstop kind of gets rattled around a little bit here and there, and obviously since this is a horror TV show, you could assume the doorstop then falls down and the door closes. To add insult to injury, the door is then locked. The keys are then lost in a crack in the front steps. And then to make things even worse, Santa is no longer in his KO spot. Yes, he's back up and roaming around somewhere. The wife then goes back inside to report the Santa's sleigh. Get it? But in the middle of her phone call, she now notices that the axe is no longer embedded in her husband's head. Uh-oh. At that point, the lead character also notices that Santa is no longer knocked out, and the 911 operator then instructs her to go find a firearm in the home, and she remembers that Joseph had a gun in the closet. Of course, while retrieving the gun in the closet, for some reason the doorknob falls off and she's then locked inside. You gotta love it. We then cut to, I guess we're kind of in the middle of it, but we sort of cut to the best scene in the entire episode, in my opinion, as far as tension building and just being generally scary and foreboding. While locked inside the closet trying to retrieve Joseph's gun, Santa is now climbing up the side of the house on a ladder. The music that's playing is very, very tension building and just like fear-inducing. And we are treated to a very creepy, just smile stare inside the window at the wife from the Santa, and it makes your skin crawl. It's wonderful. It's probably one of my favorite scenes in all of Tales from the Crypt, to be honest with you. And where is Santa headed, you might ask? Well, he's headed up to her daughter's bedroom. Yikes. After a bit of a struggle by the wife to get out of the closet, she's finally able to get free, and she immediately runs right up to her daughter's bedroom. When she gets up there, though, to her dismay, nobody's there and the window's open. At this point, she begins to head back downstairs and hears her daughter's voice, who is downstairs in the living room. And would you guess it? She's down there holding Santa Claus's hand. Now, I want to talk about this real quick. So, after the really creepy scene where the wife is locked in the closet, we're continuing on with, I guess, the progression of Santa up the ladder, right, to the daughter's bedroom. The daughter is reaching out down. The ladder's not quite high enough. Larry Drake's not like 7 feet tall. So there's a considerable gap between the two characters. Now, at this point, you have to just kind of wonder, what happened there? I don't think there's any possible way that he was able to propel himself up into the bedroom. And the logic would probably suggest that the daughter went out the window and they went through the front door, because obviously when the wife went up, nobody was there, and then they were downstairs, right? But when you really look at it, there's like a lot of space, and this little kid would have some serious balls to basically jump into this dude's arms. There was, like I said, there was a considerable gap there, and this guy's on a ladder. Like, you make one slip, you fall, and you might die. I mean, obviously, guys, I guess you gotta say, hey, it's a TV show, right? But that always kind of bugged me about this episode. It is what it is, I guess. Anyway, snapping back down to the living room scene. At this point, dread is in the air, and it's really a scene of defeat. The maniac is now truly at large with the most precious cargo, the daughter. We're treated to a wonderful cinematic / comic book style ending where Larry Drake's character utters the words, "Naughty or nice." The door then swings open, revealing the dead husband outside, and kind of like a, I don't know what you would call it, like a long shot or something. You kind of see everything. And then we swap back to the main character who is on the stairs, basically cowering in fear and just screaming her brains out. Now, I wanted to touch on this a little bit too. The screams are ridiculously long. It's very drawn out. You would kind of think anybody in this situation would stop screaming about half the time earlier and, I don't know, run away, try to go save your daughter, so on and so forth. But I think they're trying to really nail, like, the final frame of, like, the comic book style of it, if you will, where it's like, you know, you'd end on the comic book story with her screaming, just continuously. And I think that they did a good job of conveying that, although to a viewer who might not be thinking in that type of style, who is just looking at it as a TV show, you might think, oh, that's a little bit drawn out and a little bit crazy, right? But when you keep in mind that it's a comic book adaptation, it kind of does make sense. As mentioned earlier, and All Through the House is easily one of my favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes. The fact that it was the second one that aired and on the same night as the first one, meaning like you were hit with a double combo of these. Perfect combo, couldn't think of a better 1-2 punch to start the series with to kind of like get your palate wet in multiple areas. But in my opinion, in All Through the House clearly trumps The Man Who Was Death in a big way. While I feel like in All Through the House wasn't as comic booky and wasn't as artsy as The Man Who Was Death, it's definitely more of like a straightforward, I guess, slasher concept, right? And I did mention that it was done before, obviously, in the original movie. But it was really cool to see the different take on it in a more modern setting at the time, clearly. Not modern these days. Larry Drake's Santa is truly a thing of just nightmare fuel. And I feel like Mary Ellen Trainor's wife/mom character does a good job of coming off as conniving, obviously killing her husband, you know, trying to keep things under wraps and secret from the authorities and from her daughter, all the while portraying a pretty good damsel in distress, you know, trying to fight her way off from Santa while keeping her composure, albeit as, you know, pretty tough to be able to do that when you got that psycho coming at you. I'm a big fan of holiday horror, and to me this is, honestly, this is my favorite holiday horror thing. Above, you know, movies like Black Christmas, Silent Night, Deadly Night, whatever the case may be. As much as I love all those things, this takes the cake for me. Whenever it's Christmas time or the holidays in general, obviously, I try to rewatch Tales from the Crypt also during the year in general, so I probably watch this episode 2 or 3 times a year, if I'm being honest with you. But yeah, when I'm thinking of the holidays, I gotta put this thing on. Best part is, it's obviously not as long as a movie, so it's a little bit easier to kind of squeak in. And All Through the House is a masterclass in horror and slasher type genre here. Robert Zemeckis and all the actors and actresses that were present in this episode did a bang-up job. I give an All Through the House a 9.5 out of 10. Yes, as I mentioned, this is one of my favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes, and I am a Tales from the Crypt stan, so you might see some very high scores like this throughout my reviews. The only reason I didn't give it a perfect score, to be completely honest with you, a lot of it has to do with that one scene that I was talking about where did Santa go up into the room? Did she go down? I don't know. It doesn't really make much sense to me. It kind of breaks my immersion there. And I know I might be, you know, being a little bit nitpicky with that, but that knocks it down a half a point for me. If you're a fan of the series, I highly recommend that you rewatch this one again. And if you haven't watched anything yet, I would start with this one. I think it's just truly a banger. It's a holiday horror classic. There's so many good things going for it, and it's definitely one of the best episodes in the series. Before we conclude, I actually want to do a brief interview with my wife. Why am I doing this? Well, on our first date, when we came back home, I, of course, put Tales from the Crypt on. I was pretty much putting her through the gauntlet at that point, making sure she was the right one for me, right? And one of the episodes that we watched that day, of course, was an All Through the House. So, let's hear her thoughts on the matter. All right, I'm here with the infamous Mrs. Bits. Introduce yourself.
Mrs. Bits here.
There she is. I made her watch this episode on our first date, along with a few others. As I mentioned earlier, this is a very important episode to me. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, if I'm going to have my future wife here, she's going to have to enjoy this episode. Otherwise, we can't work it out, so.
I'm sitting here, so.
Yeah. All right, so the question that everybody's dying to know the answer for. What did you think of an All Through the House?
I thought it was good. I remember being scared that I would make a fool out of myself because I scare easily.
Yes.
And there were definitely a lot of jump scare moments in that episode that I feel like got me pretty good.
That's true. The tire swinging through the thing in the back. The husband coming back to life from outside.
Yes, didn't expect that part, which I feel gave a pretty good twist on the episode.
Which was your, probably, I guess, creepiest or scariest part of the episode?
I would say when the daughter brings him in at the end of the episode, just because the mother in me is like, oh my god, stay away from that man. So I definitely thought that was creepy because you see like duality of good and evil.
Yes, definitely one of the creepier and more interesting parts of the episode. Obviously, it's basically the end, but... Alright, and where do you think this episode sits in the broad landscape of the 7 seasons of Tales from the Crypt?
I would definitely say it's probably top 5 for me, just based on sentimentality alone. It has a place there. Because we watched it on the first date. And I thought that generally it's a good episode and it's something that is watched on.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier in this episode of mine that it's probably my favorite holiday horror. Mostly also because, you know, it's so short, right? So it's easy to watch.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, it's in my top 5 as well, so I think we're on the same page there. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for the interview. Once in a while I'll have you on here if it's an episode that I know you enjoy. So, Mrs. Bits signing off. If you've enjoyed this review/overview of An All Through the House, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you guys in the next episode of Tales from the Bits. Take care.